We have a lot of teams that we need to discuss, and we're going to get to them over the next couple of days. But I wanted to talk about the St. Louis Blues real quick because I promised the Blues fans on my stream on Tuesday that I would make a video on them. So here it is. The St. Louis Blues have won 10 games in a row, which is something that doesn't happen particularly often. It's not something that is like insanely rare, but it only maybe happens maybe 2 to 3 times a season at that. And for the Blues to be one of those teams that have done it after really struggling out of the gate, they go out, they fire they fire Jim Montgomery, they hire Jim Montgomery. The Bruins fired Montgomery, and they go on this pretty decent run at the start. They kind of teeter off a little bit. They're kind of like subpar during that time. And then they get to this point right here, right now, and they have now won 10 games in a row. So at this point, after the 10-game winning streak, they are 41, 28, and 7 for 89 points. They are in the first wild card spot, or at least tied for it, I believe. They have a .586 points percentage. They have scored 231 goals, have allowed 213 for a plus 18 difference. They have a 21, 14, and 3 record at home, and they are 20, 14, and 4 on the road. So, again, I do want to say that first wild card spot thing, that can vary. Again, Minnesota is like right there. The Wild could win a game, and then they'll be in the first wild card spot. The Blues could win a game, and they'll be in that first wild card spot. It's kind of become between those teams now for that spot. Again, I know Calgary and them are still there, but it's a pretty sizable gap between those teams and St. Louis and Minnesota. But as of right now, the Blues are battling for that first wild card spot, and I think from considering where they were at the beginning of the season, it's pretty impressive. And I think that, again, it has some of the vibes to 2019 in a way where this team wasn't last in the NHL like they were that year, but they're pretty bad at that point. Armstrong decides, I'm going to make a move. Once Montgomery was fired, they let Bannister go. They bring in Montgomery, and all of a sudden the narrative changes. The second half of the year, they've been absolutely hot. The emergence of guys like Dylan Holloway, the acquisition of Cam Fowler, all of those have really worked out, and it has just connected for a branch of really incredible hockey that the St. Louis Blues are playing. And not to mention, their schedule has been a big advantage of that too, but I don't want to put that out there right away. So let's go through the 10 games here and talk about all of them individually. They start out with a 5-1 win over the Minnesota Wild, a big win there over your divisional rival. That's a good thing there for sure. Again, the Wild are struggling. They're injured. Definitely, I'm a little bit more worried about Minnesota than I would be in regular circumstances, but still, they're a very good team. They beat Anaheim 7-2. Anaheim hasn't been bad this year. I'll give them that. They've been a good team this year, but what's really noticeable is that a lot of these games were against either divisional or wild card opponents. They have only played 2 teams in this stretch that are in the Eastern Conference, which is kind of wild. So they beat Nashville 4-1. This is one of many Nashville games in this stretch. So they beat Nashville 4-1. They beat Vancouver in a thrilling overtime game 4-3. I am regretting my life choices not live streaming that game. That game would have been phenomenal. So they beat Vancouver in that one. Then they beat Chicago 4-1, and that's at the 5-game meter. So again, like wins there against teams that are below you in the standings, it's huge to get those wins. Then they play Nashville again. They win that one 4-1. Then they play Montreal. Montreal was hot coming into that point. They were in a wild card spot, and they pummeled them 6-1. And again, that just showed at that point where they had won 7 games after that, they're like, oh man, like they're really starting to run away with this wild card race. Then they beat Nashville 3-2 in a game where I thought that Nashville played pretty well, but St. Louis was the better team. They beat Colorado 2-1. Not an easy feat to beat Colorado, but you still took them down. And then they beat Detroit in overtime 2-1 as well, coming back with like 30 seconds left and then winning the game in OT. Again, the live stream's up on the channel with the commentary. It was a pretty great game. One of my favorite games of the year that I've done for sure. But during this 10-game winning streak, the St. Louis Blues, again, as I mentioned, only 2 of the teams that they played were not in their conference. The other 8 were in their conference, and most notably, 6 of those teams were in the conference, were in their division. Ironically enough, 3 of the times were Nashville. So again, like, there's going to be criticism of, oh, they're playing bad teams. Well, yeah. I mean, they really can't control how their schedule is, and it's very convenient that this last stretch of games is kind of relatively easy. They do have a road trip coming up where they go to Winnipeg. They play the Oilers as well. So it's not going to be like super easy the rest of the way, but even still, the way that they're playing on this stretch, it isn't like they're not playing bad against these bad teams and they're still winning. No, they're playing a good, well-styled game. They're playing a game where they kind of lock down teams and don't let them get a lot of shots. And the shots they are getting, they aren't like high danger. Again, the only game in this entire stretch where they allowed more than 2 goals is the game against Vancouver. Apart from that, they have limited teams to 1 or 2 goals during this stretch. And I think that is very impressive, no matter who you're playing in the NHL. Even if you play Nashville 10 times in a row, you're bound to let in 3 or more goals. And they haven't. That is what's phenomenal to me on this winning streak. So we'll actually get into the scores here now that we actually went through 6 minutes of this video. Robert Thomas, first in scoring, 64 games played, 19 goals, 50 assists for 69 points this season with the Blues. I have really liked Thomas. Thomas has been on a great streak since the Four Nations break. I believe he is second or third in points, and he has just been phenomenal. Again, you watch him out there on the ice. He missed some games this year, but it shows that him coming back he's really been incredibly effective for the Blues and as somebody that I've really enjoyed. And it seems like he's finally now getting some recognition with the Blues as well. Jordan Kyrou, 76 games played, 32 goals, 31 assists for 63 points. Kyrou obviously leads the team in scoring. I would like to say Thomas leads in assists and points, obviously, but Kyrou has that pretty clear lead in goals. Really, nobody else is that close to him in terms of scoring. So again, Jordan Kyrou, we know what he can do. We know how talented Kyrou can be. And he's been nothing short of phenomenal on this stretch. There's really no doubt about it. Again, in the game against Detroit, he had that game-tying winner. I mean, just it's there. Like, he is a very talented player. Dylan Holloway. Holloway is next up there, third in scoring. Again, you guys will remember that he was signed by that offer sheet in the summer, and he has turned out to be an incredible acquisition. 76 games played, 26 goals, 37 assists for 63 points. You gave up what? A 4th-round pick for this guy? A 4th-round pick for a 60-point scorer and a guy who's probably going to hit 30 goals. There's like a few games left in the year for the Blues, and he needs 4 more goals. It's pretty likely he gets to 30. I think that's phenomenal, and it just shows that that was an incredible acquisition, and it just makes the Oilers not look that smart. Again, I get not signing Broberg because on the Oilers, Broberg is like their 5th or 6th D and getting paid $4 million. It just wasn't going to cut it. I guess you would prefer him over a guy like Emberson or Stetcher. But even still, like, it doesn't really make a lot of sense. But I will say, signing Holloway, or not signing Holloway, was a big mistake. And I've heard some people say that there might be an uptick in offer sheets. I don't know if that's necessarily true with the salary cap going up. I just don't know if I can see that. I'm not saying it's impossible. But again, I think what the Blues did, it's something we don't see very often whatsoever. And I think it's going to stay that way. I don't think we're going to see like that many in the offseason at the very least. Next up then, Brayden Schenn, 76 games played, 17 goals, 31 assists, 48 points. It's a pretty damn good thing that they did not trade Schenn at the trade deadline because, again, you heard those rumors because at that point, St. Louis wasn't firmly in a playoff spot. And we were like, I don't know. But again, like, keeping him was the greatest decision they could have made. And I think that, Schenn as the captain brings that leadership. He's not bringing like an insane amount of offense, but he's still a consistent 50-point guy. I still think that's valuable. Maybe he's a little bit overpaid, I guess, but I think still he brings a lot to the table for the Blues that really helps them in the long term, unlike what they would get like 2 first-round picks, like what a first-round pick would do. Doesn't really make sense. Pavel Buchnevich, 70 games played, 15 goals, 33 assists, 48 points as well with St. Louis this year. I think Buchnevich has been also a pretty good add too. Again, scoring at a good rate. I figured I'd see a little bit more out of him. I do feel like since coming from the Rangers to the Blues, his points have gone down a little bit, but I think still Buchnevich is still a very valuable player. Jake Neighbors, 76 games played, 19 goals, 23 assists, 42 points. I am a big fan of Neighbors. Neighbors is one of my favorite players in the NHL. This kid has a knack for goal scoring and a knack to play that is just so enjoyable to watch. And I hope for the best for him moving forward in his career. Colton Parayko, 62 games played, 15 goals, 20 assists, 35 points as well. Parayko, with Krug being out, which is forgotten in this, Krug has been out for the entire year. Parayko has really stepped up, has been a great number one defenseman for this team. And then Cam Fowler, again, like Fowler, that acquisition still looks awesome for the St. Louis Blues. 62 games played, 9 goals, 25 assists for 34 points. Again, he's not somebody who is scoring at like an insane rate, but again, he had, 2 goals in the Winter Classic. He had a goal against Detroit the other night in the overtime. So again, this is a guy who came in and has kind of rejuvenated his career a little bit. Like, his defensive numbers are pretty decent too with the Blues since coming there. I think overall, he has been a very talented player and has done really good when coming to the Blues. Now, you get into the goaltending, and one of the biggest controversies heading into the Four Nations tournament was Jordan Binnington. People didn't really know if he was going to be the guy. I even said it on the podcast and on videos here on the channel that I just didn't, I didn't like Binnington. I didn't think he was the guy. And I have been reluctantly proved wrong by that in Canada. I'm not saying that he wasn't the guy in St. Louis. And he puts these shenanigans aside that he had in 2022-23. I think Berube basically told him, like, you play like an actual goaltender or we're gonna throw you out or something like that. Again, like, I don't know. But for Binnington, since the Four Nations break, he has been remarkable. 26, 21, and 4, a 2.66 goals against average, and a .902 save percentage. Yeah, Binnington's been incredible. Binnington has been so much fun to watch. Last night against Detroit, or the other night against Detroit, he has also been phenomenal too. Just overall, his resurgence has been remarkable. And again, his numbers aren't like insanely impressive, but you got to remember that the first half of the year was really bad for St. Louis. But since coming back from the Four Nations, Binnington's been incredible. And you just look at how many goals they've allowed during this streak. They have allowed maybe 15 in 10 games. That's almost a goal per game on average. That's kind of wild when you think about it. So I got to give a lot of credit to Binnington and Joel Hofer too. Hofer kind of gets forgotten a little bit. He's been very solid this year. 15, 7, and 3, a 2.62 and a .905. I have always been a fan of Hofer. I think he's a very serviceable backup goaltender. And I think that being behind Binnington, he will eventually get his chance as a starting goaltender. It might not be for a little bit. But even now, as a young player, he's been a very serviceable backup for the Blues. Now, in terms of like current day, right now when I'm making this video, it seems like the odds are really in St. Louis's favor to get into the playoffs. I think that they're overwhelmingly in St. Louis's favor to break into there. And I honestly just think that overall, it looks good for the Blues going on this streak. And again, you're going to play one of Winnipeg or Vegas in the first round. If I'm Winnipeg or Vegas, I'm a little bit worried, to be honest with you. Now, I'm not going to entirely lock them in just yet because they have played more games than everybody else in that whole wild card race or whatever. And Calgary could easily win their next couple of games and be right there with the Blues. But I think it's more likely than not that the Blues are going to be that team that makes the playoffs. I just think it's almost set in stone at this point. Just with this 10-game winning streak, I would be shocked if they find their way out of this somehow and they end up bouncing out at the end of the year and not making it. I'd be shocked. So it seems like the odds are really in St. Louis's favor there. But let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below on the Blues this season. Again, I know I promised this yesterday, but I only got to do it now, so I apologize for that. But anyways, that's it for me. Thank you guys for watching. If you enjoyed, make sure to like the video down below. Please do consider subscribing and join the community that we're building here on this channel. That is it for me. Thank you guys for watching. New Nordcast episode tomorrow, and I'll see you guys in the next video.